Andy, how are you, shipmate?
Yeah, I'm all good, thanks, Chris.
I
Good.
should say that more slowly, shouldn't I, for people out there that aren't aware of Royal Navy slang and lingo. That was ship, as in the floaty things, folks. I didn't just insult Andy from the get-go. Uh, Mate, first question. With a surname Gallie, did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What? How did that go down in the Navy?
yeah. Well, I lost count of the amount of times I was asked, "Why weren't you a chef?" Right, and then of course HMS Raleigh was Trafalgar Galley, so the nickname was Traff for a while. So yeah,
Andy, I'm just going to read off the information you sent me so I get this across. Friends, what an incredible story. And I'm quoting, Andy was a Navy veteran of 13 years who suffered gambling addiction for 33. No, that's not an Illuminati reference for all you conspiracy theorists. Uh, he left the Royal Navy in 2011 and worked at a National League rugby club for general manager before working with the royal household and committing fraud, as you do. Serving 17 months in prison, and then within 18 months release, Andy had committed further fraud to the tune of £200,000, and all to feed this awful addiction. Andy's went into rehab fairly recently, Andy, February 22. And now you're working to support others and doing prevention work within the armed forces. Did I get all that right?
yeah, absolutely, Chris. I think that's about the short of it.
Yeah, mate. First off, thank you for. I don't want to say bravery. It sounds ank, but
Yeah,
I just mean, a lot of people say to me, Chris, oh, there's a stigma about. It's like, no, there's nothing. There's like, if we can't be honest with ourselves and people, how can you learn anything? And how can we all get better? And also, it's only by having these, at the time, catastrophic, awful experiences that we learn how to not have them, but also how to improve our personal skill set and be better people, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. I think the only way I was going to grow from it is to accept it, fully understand it first, then accept it, and then share it. If there's an old saying of, "Oh, if it helps one person, I'll be happy," but it's absolutely true. If one other person avoids going down that same path as I did, then I've done, what I needed to do. So yeah,
Well, within seconds of speaking, Andy, you've already helped thousands of people will be watching this and going, wow, it's okay to talk about these things, is it? Because I'm struggling a bit myself. It might not be with the gambling, it might be with the booze, it might be shopping, it might be some, porn addiction. There's everything is trying to drag us down off our perch, isn't it? And um, you know, we'll sit the old those people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
yeah, exactly that. And I think that's part of my story now is the fact that, by sharing it, I know those that are still around me are my supporters, so that gives me the strength to keep doing it. But you're right, with alcohol, it doesn't matter what the addiction is. I had to get to the why. And, I know there's always big campaigns around men's mental health and, there's a lot of organizations deal with that. But the reality is that's what drove my addiction. I didn't know that at the time, but I had to get down to the why. I had to deal with all of those thoughts, feelings, emotions, things that I used to call pink and fluffy and, didn't want to talk about. And, until I dealt with that, I was always going to go back to it, So, yeah.
As much as I'm congratulating you, Andy, um, there is a serious side to this, and I do have to tear you down a strip.
Mhm.
Um, why the hell did you join the Navy?
Well, my IQ was too high for the army, and yeah, it's the thought of hotels for the rest of my life took me out of the RAF. So, being the senior service, I thought Navy was the way ahead.
Says a person who joined the Navy himself. So there we go. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess there's probably some childhood trauma that you experienced. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's one that I wanted to avoid completely. Like going into therapy, I thought I'm not going to be one of these that's always childhood trauma and it's this, it's that. But do you know what? The reality is there was no one massive event. There was no one massive trauma that I could look at and say it was that. It was a lot of years of a lot of witnessing. My mum had really poor mental health, struggled herself. The family was quite dysfunctional. And there were just certain things that were said to me over those years that led to me believing kind of I wasn't enough, I wasn't good enough. Just you're never going to make anything of yourself. And obviously, my gambling started about 9 years old. So I didn't know who I was as a human being, really. So yeah, there's a lot of things that, as I say, just added in. And I think that's what I need to get across to people is they all say, oh, I didn't have trauma. Yeah, you did. You probably have 50 or 60 different little snippets that have just built and built and built. And over our lives, we add to that and add to it until you get to a breaking point, you know?
Yes. Because the reason I mention it is these behaviors, and that's what they are. We call it acting out or whatever. What in reality, it's self-medicating PTSD, isn't it? Post-traumatic trauma, which for service personnel, and a lot of people are surprised by this, it for the most part is from our childhoods. It's not from some heroic fight in a bloody, warship in the South Atlantic or not that isn't traumatic in itself, but that can be healed upon quite, because you're an adult when you have that experience. Whereas the childhood ones is deep down buried. You're too young to be able to process what this chaos could be. Violence, could be sexual abuse, could be just the trauma of experiencing parents split and thinking, oh, I'm never going to see my mummy or perhaps my daddy ever again. And it's embedded so deep down that a resultant behavior is joining the military to cure that sense of, well, lots of senses, but one of them might be a need to prove yourself, etc., etc. And then, of course, when we leave the military, very often the behaviour, it incubates in the military, and then when we leave and we haven't got that supportive umbrella and that, that supportive matrix, it all goes to rat shit, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think the childhood trauma, as I say, that's already there. That's quite embedded. And then it's very much the old saying of, the straw that broke the camel's back. So quite often something will happen in adulthood, and that could be in the forces, could be something quite catastrophic in itself. But that added to the childhood trauma, that is what results in that crash. And I think you're absolutely right with when you leave the services, and it's one of my biggest concerns and something I want to get across to people is exactly what you lose. We all build it up to, I get out, I'm finishing my 22 years, or I've put my notice in and I've only got 12 months and it's this big, I'm getting out. And actually, you lose so much of yourself. You lose that sort of status that you got in the community, really. You lose the banter, the camaraderie, basically a massive family that you've got around you. You could be going from cheap rates of accommodation and food supplied for you to all of a sudden market rate rents and food, maybe struggling to get employment where employers don't understand our skill sets. So I think that childhood trauma, plus some trauma in the military, plus the trauma of leaving, and, you know, dreams not coming true, goals not coming to fruition as you leave, can add to a much bigger crash again. And if you've come out with a pension after 22 years, you've also got a pot of money that, what do I do with it? Do I drink? Do I gamble? Do I go shopping? Do I, as you say, access porn sites, whatever? I think there's a whole range of behaviors that we can get into. And if you're already predisposed to that kind of behavior, you know, we're in for a bit of a shock.
So let's tell your story then, Andy. What, I'm guessing you passed out a rally, HMS Rally down there in Cornwall, do all your sea survival training and firefighting, and, well, certainly if you go on ship you do, because we did that down there. What was your first posting?
So first posting was to HMS Drake in Plymouth, and that then followed with SM2, which was a submarine unit in their personnel office. So I wasn't going on submarines. One, I'm 6'3". Two, I was about 20 stone probably at the time, and I'm not going to fit on a submarine very well, along with claustrophobia. And then my first ship was HMS Coventry. On there, I mentioned claustrophobia. I had a bit of an incident during a fire exercise one day, put the breathing apparatus on, just lost the plot completely, just wanted to rip it off. So I was landed for a little bit, but then I served on HMS Cumberland, back to Raleigh a couple of times in the UPO, and then covered a couple of other ships like HMS Scott, and then on to FOST, which was Flag Officer Sea Training. From there, I went to the Waterfront Manning Office, and then on to HMS Endurance. So we left on a 18-month deployment, 4 months on, 2 months off. And I think it was December 2009, and they had a catastrophic failure in the engine room, flooded the engine room, flooded the ship, basically.
So Endurance is the Antarctic survey ship, isn't it? Named after Shackleton's original ship that sunk in the ice. Yeah. Were you on it when it had the failure?
I was home on Christmas leave, and so they were, as I say, just off the Strait, or the Magellan Straits, just off Chile. There was a film crew on board at the time, and they were filming a program called Ice Patrol. So they were on board as well. And at that point, I wouldn't say I thought, I'm scared, I need to leave, but it was certainly hang on, I've got 3 young children at home. Maybe I need to think about this. And to be honest, even that's a lie. I think I was so embedded in my gambling and manic. I had been updating my own fitness test because I was unfit at the time. So I had access to JPA. I was updating my own fitness tests so that, they were off my back. There was just so much going on in my life that I think I just, I felt the net was closing in, and it was almost a press of the button to get them off my case to put my notice in. Because the reality was I was still loving it. I genuinely did. It was just like, it wasn't really work. It was like being with a big family, as I say, and I'm sure I'm reminiscing over the good times and forgetting all the bad, but that's what we do. It's a great, great life.
Yeah, we should also point out there's, a lot of people get really damaged by bullying in the forces, something that I don't think anyone can avoid. I'm only saying that because we look back with rose-tinted glasses, don't we? And for the youngsters watching, if you was bullied at school, you don't want to go into a career where you get bullied as well, because you become the person that we're discussing here today, or potentially a heavily traumatized person. I just want to peel back a bit, Andy. You said Coventry. So was that the new Coventry? Because wasn't the Coventry sunk in the Falklands?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's a new Coventry. It's like 22.
And did you go to Antarctica?
Yeah. So I had two periods of 4 months down there.
Good, isn't it?
Really, just amazing. Yeah, I seen that you had scuba dived with, seals, the fur seals and all. But yeah, what an experience. But I have to, again, and this hasn't always been pessimistic, but whilst I was down there, genuinely my head, like my sister was down there at the same time on a working boat. She volunteered on a working boat and must have come back with about 10,000 photos, and it's before the era of really the mobile phones being brilliant. And I hated it at times because it was so far away from civilization. And when I say civilization, I mean my gambling. I just wanted to get back to it.
Wow. At what point then did the little sort of angel on your shoulder start saying, Andy, this is going to end in tears, mate?
With the gambling?
Yeah.
I can honestly say probably about 13 years old, and that sounds ridiculous, but my mum actually called Gamblers Anonymous in when I was 13 years old. She was that concerned, and it was that much of a problem. And I can't remember the full reaction, but I really reacted badly, stormed off, run off for a few hours, shouting and screaming, I haven't got a problem. At that point, I clearly knew I had a problem. I couldn't stop. So, yeah, I think even back then, you knew it was a problem.
Yes, I'm just showing a clip of me diving in Antarctica just to really spice things up a bit. It's sorry, I completely cut into your tale of woe.
Carry on.
But to scuba dive on icebergs in Antarctica was quite a move forward from chronic addiction on the streets of Hong Kong, Andy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think our cold water team, cold weather team, the Marines were on board at the time, and they absolutely loved it. Like they were every single day abseiling down crevices, out in the rib, over doing Shackleton's Walk. So I'm sure that kind of thing, it doesn't leave you, does it, once you've been down there?
No, I wanted to go back down. If I had a skill set, I would have tried to get a job on one of the one of the surveys down there, the British Antarctic Survey or something like that. It just really gets under your skin, the tales of exploration and adventure. There were two lads, for example, I think they were Norwegians. They just hitchhiked down there. They got a passage on a ship that was going to, I don't know, probably going to South Georgia or something, and they said, look, can you just drop us on Antarctica? And I'm guessing they were dropped on the peninsula, and they roughed it for it was a year. I think it was a year later they were picked up again, and they just built themselves a shelter out of rocks on the beach or whatever. They obviously ate a lot of the wildlife. Yeah. We sorry, I don't want to take too much aside here, but one of our divers drowned on our first dive, so that was kind of
wow.
Yeah, that really brought it home to you, the remoteness. There's no one to come and rescue you down there. We just had to put the girl in the in a special freezer room that they had on the expedition ship for such an eventuality, and crack on. But yeah, what a place! So, sorry, Andy. Back to your. So you're in the Navy. You're gambling. You're really loving it. So you're in a honeymoon period where it's good. It's going to bring you riches. It's feeding you dopamine. And then your mum says something, and you're in denial, and you're like, shut up, there's nothing wrong with me. This is, yeah. Had anyone at work noticed it?
So my mum picked it up when I was 13. So I was 5 years before joining the Navy. So that's when she called Gamblers Anonymous in. So by the time I joined the Navy, and what actually happened was I've been told my whole life up until 18 years old that I'm ridiculous. I've got a problem. It's a problem with gambling. I joined the Navy, and within the automat and NAFI were around 40 fruit machines, lads queued up to play them. And that just normalised it for me. And what it done was allowed me to think, well, everybody in Cornwall is ridiculous. Like, they're all wrong. Look at all these people. They're from all over the country, and they know exactly what we can do. This is brilliant. And obviously with a new ego of joining up, first time salary, it just become an absolutely normal way of life. So it justified it for me. And if anything, that's where my addiction really, really took off. Loans were available, money was available. So yeah.
How did you hide it from the Navy then? You already mentioned fiddling the books a bit.
All right, Chris. You know what I mean? No, yeah, no, it was. I think I took out. So I got married at 19, first child at 20. Moved into married quarters, and there was a bookies up in Crown Hill in Plymouth, and
Still
that's
is.
when the fixed odd betting terminals come out. So I went from £1 a spin on the fruit machine to £100 every 30 seconds on a roulette machine. So what I then started doing was every single bank was credit cards, was loans, was, I need a consolidation loan. I'd take another loan. So ended up with about £35,000 of debt by the time I was 25, 3 young children. And I had, my biggest win when I was 27 years old. I was living at Taylor Road at the time, and they were selling the married quarters off for about £30,000 a pop. And I won £127,000 one night. And I couldn't tell my wife straight away because she had already threatened on being kicked out if I ever gambled again. And I went to bed, got back up, couldn't settle. And within 3 hours, I'd lost it all. It was back when you could reverse your withdrawal. So you basically make your withdrawal, but then it was pending for 3 days and you could reverse parts of it. So I ended up reversing the whole lot, went from 1,000 to 3,000 to 5 to 10 to 10 to 10. And then deposited the other few £100, £1,000 that I had in my account at the time. So from affording 4 married quarters on that road that night to not being able to afford milk, nappies, or whatever the next morning. And then came the blame onto my wife at the time because, well, I'm an addict, I'm, a gambler, you should have bought it all last week when I gave you the money. Like, it was always other people's fault. And that was, so I talk about suicide quite a bit. So I apologize to anyone that's triggering, but that was my first real strong sort of want to be gone. I grew up, as far back as I can remember, I've always had this thought of suicide is a when, not if for me. My life was always going to end by suicide because just take yourself out of it. I can't deal with it. I can't, so that kind of event, when you have those catastrophic losses or just devastating times, obviously that's going to heighten it even further. So yeah, that was about 27 years old. I was putting in travel claims, that I shouldn't have been to get money back. I was, just taking out really dodgy loans. I was in a mess, an absolute mess.
What was your preferred method of gambling?
So, as I say, it started with the fruit machine. So it started with the 2p push machines, and anybody listening who may laugh at that, they are so powerful. You'll see the children going back, please, mum, just another pound that's right on the edge. It's, and that's that first warning sign that actually a child can't leave it. But so it then moved on to the fruit machines, as I say, the fixed odd betting terminals. When they brought them into the bookies, they were referred to as the crack cocaine of, gambling, and they absolutely are. I was hooked from day one. And then as the online era come about, I then moved online. So it was, anything from slots to video poker, roulette. It would normally start with slots. If I won, I would go on to video poker. If I won again, I would go to roulette. And on roulette, I could do anything around £2,500 a spin. And that was every 2 minutes. So if I had a big win, I could lose it in an hour, Well, the 127,000 is prime example. You win that kind of money, and all you do is you increase your bets, because even if I'd won £1 million, I wouldn't have stopped. There was no target. There's no end to gambling. And I think that's where the misconception is, that it's all about money, and it's not. It's my escape,
And winning is it's not the right term, is it? Because it doesn't become that anymore. It's you're not winning. You're just engaging in a behavior where you're actually really losing, no matter what that financial payback is.
Yeah.
You're
And anyone listening, it's a short-term loan. That's the way I explain it to people now is, even if I won £10,000, all they're doing, and the gambling company knows this, they're loaning me that money because they know next week they're getting it back with interest.
What was the feeling like of, for example, you got 100 grand in the bank and by the next morning it's gone? How did that leave you feeling?
Just empty, confused. Your head cannot stop. You just, and actually, my thought process is, I need to get money to gamble because I'll do it. I'll get it back. So you genuinely believe if I can just get hold of £1,000, I can win this back, and I can sort it all out. And so you don't even stop at that point. It's not a case of, but it's total devastation to the point, if I can't find any money, I'm just going to take myself out of this life. Because to me, I could never break gambling. I never genuinely believed I'd be sat here in front of you today in recovery. And a lot of people say that, but honestly, I thought the only way out of gambling, to take my power back from gambling, was to take my own life.
Mate, you're not the only one in recovery from gambling. You're looking at someone.
Oh yeah, okay.
Well, people out there might not understand this, and that's fine, but I'm saying it for the people it can help. My first addiction, and I mean the first signs that something was seriously wrong in my psyche, it was coffee, mate. Coffee at 10 years old. Right? I wouldn't even give my little one coffee ever. If he wants to have one as he becomes a teenager, fine. But we were, coffee and tea was normal when we were kids. Not so much the coffee, but tea. If you went to your doctor at 7 years old and you had some, the flu or something, they go, right, go back, tuck yourself in bed, plenty of cups of tea, right?
Yeah.
And I remember running back from the school bus to get home, and all I pictured in my mind was boiling because I'm acting out. This is the psychological process of acting out, friends. I'm already in my mind picturing boiling the kettle, opening the jar of coffee. I've lost count of the amount of coffee jars I opened as a youngster. And the reason I remember it is I used to climb up on a chair, or the sideboard or something. I used to get a spoon, and I used to love taking the coffee lid off the jar and then trying to drop the spoon through the tinfoil, tinfoil seal on that. Anyway, I digress, but that was the first sign for me. Well, it actually wasn't the first sign. Something wasn't quite right in my head, but that was the first manifestation of self-medication. And moving forward, I think I started drinking at probably 13. I think we all started experimenting with cigarettes at 11. And by the time I was 17 and I passed my driving test and got a car, every night I drive down to the local town, and there was an arcade there. And we all used to meet at the Crown Arcade. It's just what we did, and people would pull up in there, park their cars and motorbikes and this sort of stuff. And I developed an addiction to the slot machines. And I remember, not on the level of desperation that you've felt, Andy, but I remember that feeling of leaving that arcade and having to walk a mile to the highway to hitchhike home again because I'd spent my bus. Before I had a car, I was getting the bus. I spent my bus money again because I was just going to get that one more. And it was horrible, It was horrible. I don't know how I cracked that, because the other addictions in my life, I wouldn't say I've cracked them now, if I was honest. I mean,
Yeah.
I've definitely maintained working at it. But that one, I was able to turn a switch. That pain of walking home all the time, I'd get my benefit money. Back then it was you get 30 quid a week on benefits, or I was doing a YTS scheme or something. That was gone on the first day that I got it, and all I would get out of it would be a cherry Coca-Cola, because I used to buy that when I came out the post office where I got me money.
Yeah.
You know, that was the only thing I got for the fortnight, was a bottle of cherry Coca-Cola. All the rest went in the machines. That's your whole salary. So think, anyone at home now, whatever you earn now, you've just chucked that in the machine, and then you can't even get the bus home. So I feel for you, Andy. You know, not
Yeah,
anymore. Not now. I don't, because you've turned this for the better. But I know that
yeah.
feeling of despair.
I just think it's so interesting listening to you about the bus fare and you know what, I used to find that last bit of money almost the biggest buzz. You didn't feel it, you know, at the time, but is because that's the biggest risk. You know, I always needed that bigger risk. So if I was risking my rent money, it's almost like a bigger buzz, you know. And as I was saying about money, it's people will always assume it's greed, it's money. Do you know what? I think I've been on holiday once in the last 15 years. I took my kids on holiday once abroad whilst, you know, when they were younger, and never really had flash cars. Like, I've always had cars, but not new ones, not. So it wasn't a case of, like, I've sat with £100,000 in my bank sometimes. And do you know what? I've questioned spending 50 quid on the shopping, because that's not what that money's for. That's like, you know, a heroin addict having a whole stash of heroin and being asked to give bits of it away all the time. It's not happening, you know. And that's what the money was to me. It wasn't money. It wasn't to be spent. And you actually live quite frugally, you know. So, but it is really interesting to hear you say about the self-medicating, because, you know, to this day, I can, as I say, weight is always an issue. I'll go up to 20 stone. And then the next morning I'll get up, go, right, I'm starting my exercise, starting my diet, and I'll drop to about 14 stone within months, because it's an obsession. It's a compulsion. It's, you know, recovery. People will say to me, it's become your compulsion. Brilliant. If that's what it is, and I'm using it now in the right way, then so be it, you know. And it actually is. It's a passion. It's a compulsion. So I'll accept that one.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I'm just having to fiddle with the volumes, and yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell us about then. So you've left the Navy, and you're working for a rugby club.
Yeah, so I sort of left a couple of months not finding any work. I gambled away all my resettlement sort of grant or whatever it was, £10,000 or £12,000. And I then applied for a job as an administrator at the rugby club. And on getting there, there was high levels of debt within the club. It was in quite a messy state. And I loved it. I absolutely fell in love with the place. I'd always been a football fan up until that point. And I instantly become a rugby fan. It was the most amazing atmosphere. The club was, the people within the club, the volunteers, the, you know, the staff that were there. It was just brilliant. And it was almost like having that banter and camaraderie back that I was missing from the Navy. It was like having a little or a bigger family again. So yeah, and I started working there, but the same problems took over. I would go to the bookies from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. I would then go back to the club when the volunteers would arrive, and I would, I don't know, do meetings up until 10 o'clock. And then that's where drinking had always been an issue for me. You know, Navy, it was a culture that you know, some of the horror stories from my time in the Navy, because you didn't know what you were getting with me. It was 8 times out of 10, you would get the laughing and joking, really top bloke. The other 2 times I was going to kill someone. Just, you know, the slightest little comment and my eyes go black, I've been told, and off I go. So the rugby club sort of added to that, and I would upset people quite regularly, being outspoken, sort of, especially under drink, thinking you're being funny and you're not. But yeah, a lot of really good people there. And, again, another member of the club, a member there, won £1 million on the lottery, already had a gambling addiction. His daughter had hold of his bank card, and all that done was escalated his spins up to £200 a spin instead of £2 a spin. And within the 2 years I was there, 2.5, he had, almost lost a lot, believing he was going to do it again. So even there, and I know I'd look at him and I would discuss him with other people, saying it's ridiculous, isn't it? Imagine having an addiction like that, knowing all the time that mine is just as raging, but I was deflecting off onto him. So take it away from myself, have a look at him. He's worse than me, and I think that takes me on to a point. Sorry, I'm going off on tangents, but
it's fine.
I think where we talk about amounts of money and gambling harm could be whether you're losing 50p a day, £500,000 a day. Do you know what? The amount of money really doesn't matter. If it's causing you harm or your family harm, if you're on universal credit and you're losing £20 a week, that is a problem. If you're earning £2 million and you're losing £1 million, it's a problem. So we need to take the amounts almost out of it. I know I've spoken about a couple of amounts today and they are relevant, but the reality is it's what it's causing. It's the harm it's causing. And family, I swear, the most difficult thing to talk about is my children, simply because, the damage I've done to them. They're now 24, 23 and 19. And when I talk about my trauma from childhood and my learned behaviors, do you know what? The trauma I've caused them through so many things that I didn't realize I was doing or saying, or, it's not on a conscious level. It's not that I was beating them or berating them. I love them, beyond. But my actions, and there was one day that I had won £10,000, brought it home. The next day I'd lost a lot. And in the meantime, I bought them all new phones and whatever they wanted. So when I was having the argument with my wife the next day, and it was heated really bad, they were upstairs packing that stuff away, or going, "Oh, Dad, please take it back. It's our fault. Like, he's bought us this," and then I'm calling them selfish, or I'm calling them. And I had a discussion. I talk about it openly with my children now, massively. And he said to me, "You called me selfish one day," and it stuck with me. So whenever I offer him anything now, his instant answer is, "No, I'm good, thanks. I'm good." And that has stuck with them. That will stick with them. So it's those others that we're impacting during our addiction, that it's not until you get into recovery that you start and it all comes flooding home. And that guilt is hard to deal with. But as soon as you face up to it, accept it and talk to them and just say, "Look, I don't understand because I didn't live it, but I'm here for you to talk to." It's massive.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, I always say to people, well, past doesn't exist. Forget about it. Literally, we're judged under spirit, God, whatever we're going to call it. We're judged on how do we behave today and are we trying? I know I don't want to use the word slip up, but I know what I'm like. But, I also know that I'll never stop trying. The other thing, it's interesting you say about the quantities of stuff, because again, there's just no education or understanding around mental health. And when you say I used to do that and I used to be like, it's really unfair, because the person listening who's oblivious to the nature of this, let's just say illness, or as you very well described it, psychological programming, won't understand that it's not Andy that's done these things, folks. Think of it like this. Satan owns your mind. You have to learn how to get it back from him, because it was your addictive psychology that did this. It was your addictive mindset that did this, not you, Andy, and it's important that we sort of talk about these things. But I remember, or people that are not in the know, there's two things going on here. First, they find it really hard to understand that when I lived in Hong Kong, I was chronically addicted to crystal meth. I did it all day, every day for thereabouts for 7 months. The days I didn't do it, I was just a wreck, utterly exhausted. I would stay up for 9 days on end with no food, very little to drink, dancing my ass off in my favourite nightclub with a Filipino working domestic workers. I almost said working girls then. Well, a lot. That was the Thai girls, but anyway, I dance enough to like run 4 marathons a night. Anyway, what am I saying? I ended up so chronic in such bad psychosis that I tried crawling across a wire cable between 2 skyscrapers. That's how ill I was. I thought I was doing a commando crawl, and this is what the Marines had taught me to do, and it was all going to come good if I could get across this cable. That's how, right? There's people that ignore all of that, not to mention like my medical history where the doctor says this guy's fucked and he's never going to recover, etc., etc. Or the fact that I've written 3 best-selling books about the experience. They don't care about that. They focus on the fact that a gram a week of crystal meth was enough to destroy my life this much. I should point out for friends listening, crystal meth, it's not like Coke or something where you can Coke. I remember me and my mates, we did 17 grams one night. I don't recommend it at all, but we did. And then we got up and went to the pub in the morning, and the landlord promptly looked at us and went, fuck off. I think he knew the game, right? Anyway, it's not like that. Crystal meth is refined 99.7% pure amphetamine, the base amphetamine, the likes of which you're never going to, come across like on the dance scene or something. 1 crystal of it, which is like a little rock salt, that'll get you high for 36 hours, right? And in a gram, you've got about 30 to 50 of them crystals. So what you do the maths, folks, But here's the thing, even though it's the strongest form of amphetamine, even though that will get your average non-heavy user off their head for a bloody week, that doesn't matter. It's how it affected me. If it were just 1 crystal and it sent my life into a downward spiral and I started to ignore my kids' needs and stop paying my bills and stop turning, be irregular, turning up for work and be angry and stroppy with people and then over the top the next minute because I'm all nice. That's the downward spiral of addiction, Andy, isn't it? It doesn't matter what's caused it. It's the resultant behaviour which can be different for everyone, because I did know people in Hong Kong, they used to inject like 0.5 gram of this stuff at a time. I'm just so glad I wasn't at that because this pittance that I took was enough to send me into really bad clinical psychosis on and off for months. So
yeah, and I think that's the reason I mention it, is just because there's been a lot of feedback sometimes to me that, oh, well, at least I'm not at your level. Oh, well, I haven't got a problem because I don't gamble as much as Andy did, and that's what I need to take away is, just because I gambled hundreds of thousands or whatever, that doesn't mean that you losing £5, but actually not being able to buy your food, that is still as bad of a problem, and that harm that you're suffering is still enough for you to seek help today. So don't think you're going to approach a rehab centre or a treatment provider and be turned away just because you've only gambled £10. They will see the harm it's causing to you and that they want to help you, So if you're feeling it and it's affecting your life in any way, just ask for help.
So Andy, was there any shenanigans on your part at this rugby club then? Was there any, were you trying to fiddle the books or anything to feed you a habit?
No, I had my resettlement grant, as I say, that I left for Navy with, and that was that was funding it, funding my gambling. And as I say, they had such high levels of debt that you were just constantly firefighting to try and get their bills paid, really. So on that score, it was probably a good thing, because they just didn't have the excess cash, to even be looking at. They were, it was a struggle to pay the electric there some months, or trying to get the players paid, or, so. And I think what that done, all of the manicness around that money and everything else, it was almost a buzz in itself for me, was trying to get their bills paid and trying to get, there's problems. It was enough to, I needed that busyness. And I think, recently I've been talking about potential ADD with me or whatever, and all gambling really done a lot of the time was calmed my head down. And I've heard others with ADD say that they've used amphetamines, and they don't get a kick from amphetamines or a buzz. All they do is that then makes their brain settled, and that's what gambling done for me. And I think that's what the rugby club done for me. The busyness and the firefighting with the creditors and the daily debts and everything else was busy enough to calm my mind. But my behaviour was shocking, absolutely appalling. Drinking, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning when, the Lithuanian cleaning family come rushing through, and, I've got a wife and 3 kids at home. It's spiraled.
Yeah, so you got a cross addiction there with alcohol.
Yeah.
Not good for us, for those who've been through the forces, is it?
No, I gave it up. What was that, 5.5 years ago now? And it's funny, my therapist said to me, were you an alcoholic? I said, no. He said, did you have to have a drink every Friday, Saturday night? Yeah. Was it same sort of time? You go there on your way home from work, you had to have it. If you missed it, you were itchy. Yeah. Well, then you had a drinking problem. Yeah, absolutely, I did. So yeah, I'm glad to be away from that. And alcohol almost scares me on the same level as gambling. Both of them were going to end me up in a lot of trouble or debt. So and I'm not this big born again, I'm going to preach to everybody and whatever. I'm just saying, what does drink give you? You think you're being more sociable. What does it take away from you? Well, actually, you're hungover the next morning. It's taken, your money from you. You potentially upset people the night before on social media or to their face. You're feeling ill. So actually, why do I drink? For what? I can bore people whether I'm sober or drunk, Chris. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff. Primarily, we've got to remind ourselves, if we're parents, who is really suffering in this equation, and obviously it's the kids. It's a form of alcohol. Even a casual drink for someone who doesn't have an addiction problem still means you neglect the kids the next day, unless you're some sort of alcohol superman, because sitting on the couch watching Netflix like that and ordering in pizza and all right son, I'll be there in a minute, and that minute never comes. Whereas without a hangover, you'd be, all right son, what are we doing today then? Okay, right, you get your clothes on, we'll get in the car, we'll go and do, you can sit. It's not to say people can't, let their hair down now and again, but just to show people, what classes as neglect. So were you kind of pilfering a bit of the alcohol from this plate, or helping yourself to the bar?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, probably. I was behind that bar. It was probably giving drinks away, or, I would order an extra keg in just to be the one giving the beer away. And, it's almost that need for acceptance. And I think if I dig much deeper, and I do dig quite deep now, there's always been that need to people please and to be accepted. And I think the reality is, now in recovery, I am accepted by most people. Like, I'm a decent person, but because of my gambling and the drinking and just the way I was treating everybody else, I thought nobody liked me. And the only way I could get that was to be this giver, and to be doing people favors and be the one who would go out of his way for people. And all that was actually doing was just adding more stress to my life, making me resentful that these people kept asking me for stuff. Well, if you keep giving, they're going to keep asking, but I think it is a trait of a an addict or somebody suffering harm, you know, that we will go out of our way to build those relationships that we think we need. And we don't, you know, it's those people, as I say, that are around me today are there for one reason only, and that's because they believe in me and they love me. You know, I don't give them anything. Like, if anything, I still take to this day where people are looking after me and, Andy, you're right, make sure you're okay. Make sure, you know, it's, so yeah, those people that are around now, brilliant.
So, what about the royal household then? Are we talking Buckingham Palace or something?
Well, it was in connection with the role that I was doing. So there were garden parties at Buckingham Palace. There were Christmas parties at St James's Palace, and obviously, you know, the patron was royally linked. And I, as I say, unfortunately, the fraud that I was convicted for there was £47,500. I hate to say it, but the charity leg of that was veteran linked. And I just think there was one day I got up and I just thought, I can't keep doing this. And I was on the train on the way in, and I just sent an email saying, look, this is what I've been doing. This is how I've been doing it. This is where to look for it. So what I'd done, I went in and put my keys on my desk, walked out, back down in the lift, and then sent the email. So it was a wimp's way out again, really, rather than facing, you know, the person in charge. But I genuinely did respect him, and I respected all of the people in there, and I don't think I could face it. So I took the wimp's way out of admitting it by email. And yeah, I don't know. It would have gone much bigger. I think it would have continued for another year or so.
So did the cops then turn up?
Yeah, so, you know, again, I talk about great people, but the brigadier who was in charge there was the CEO at the time. Absolutely amazing man, and he finally managed to get through to me once I picked up the courage to answer the phone. And he said, look, Andy, I blame the sin, not the sinner. And that's always stuck with me. He said, don't take my kindness for weakness, but I do blame the sin. And he just said, look, if you can get that money anyway, you know, you can pay it back, you can walk away from here. I don't want to wreck the rest of your life with a criminal conviction. So even at that point, he was still trying to support me and say, can we get this done? But yeah, so he said, I'll give you a week. But within that time, there was no way I didn't have a penny. So yeah, then the police got involved, went into the police station in Charing's Cross, I think it was. And I just admitted everything, as I do. Like, once I'm caught, you can have everything. So that took very little time. And then I was taken to Southwark Crown Court and dealt with there.
My mum was poisoned in Charing Cross.
Right.
So I just had to say that because it's not often you hear the words Charing Cross when you live in the southwest. She was a nurse in Charing Cross Hospital, doing all her, you know, her training. She was a state registered nurse, which is the old equivalent of having a degree, I suppose. And after the war, it was all reconditioned with loads of asbestos. And the nurses used to just hang the towels up to dry on these pipes that were lagged with asbestos, of obviously not knowing what we know now. And gosh, 40 years later, it comes knocking at the door, you know, in the form of tumours. Yeah, sorry, a bit of a morbid. No, it's all fine. Don't worry. It's not fine for me mum, but I don't think she's in a position to complain. What am I saying? Yes. So, police, Charing Cross. It's all suddenly. Have you come to terms with the fact then that you have a problem with addiction, or are you still in denial?
100%. I think I could be addicted to absolutely anything. I think if I take a real interest in something, I end up, you know, there's a lot of research gone into the language that we use and whether it's addiction or problem or harm, or, you know, I look at it as it's a compulsion. So everything I do is a compulsion. I'm a compulsive gambler. I'm a compulsive eater. I'm a compulsive exerciser once I start exercising. I'm a compulsive writer once I start writing things down. And the safety net that I've got now is the constant awareness. So whereas before I'd have buried my head, now if I see something happening, the same with recovery becoming a compulsion, I see it and then I can manage it, or I can at least talk to people and say, I feel this is getting a bit out of control. Because as you say, I'm always going to make mistakes. I'm always going to take something too far. I believe it's in my nature. You know, I work at a very quick pace. There's still that impulsivity sometimes. You know, you make decisions way too quick. So yeah, I think there's genuinely something in my brain that just, it's there, and I just need to be aware of it. You know, I always talk, I know you said earlier about, you know, that wasn't me. And I always talk about my addict as being Andrew or Andy. And it's like the chimp paradox. He's locked in a little cell at the back of my brain currently, and there's loads of locks around it, but he's always going to be in there. So, you know, as soon as I start overeating, or I get low in mood, or I maybe, I don't know, start doing things I shouldn't be doing, each one of those locks starts coming off. And all of a sudden he's strong enough to get out. You know, so if I let my guard down and start acting out of, you know, or within bad behavior, he has a chance of getting out. So it's being aware of that all the time and going, hang on, he's chatting to you from in there. He wants out. He's trying to convince you, let me out, you know? So I genuinely believe that addict will always be in my brain, and he's there, but he's at the minute and one day at a time, whatever, you know, route you want to take, he's in there and I'm aware of him. So
moving on then, where did you have more sex, in the Navy or in prison?
definitely prison. It was worth the free vapes.
Do they have a golden rivet in there too?
Yeah, 100. Well, they didn't until I introduced it. You know, I was like, come on, fellas. You know, when we talk about compulsions, luckily that wasn't one of mine. But yeah, no, they all thought I was a policeman in there. So I was probably at risk for a lot of it. And then once people actually spoke to you and they heard you and they went, oh no, he's sound, he's all right. But, you know, I suppose again at 6'3", dark hair, whatever, just you don't particularly look like a stereotypical prisoner, I suppose. So yeah, they were adamant that I was a copper. People used to write DCI on my nameplate outside my cell, you know, and although it's banter and I love banter, at some points you think it only takes one person to take it the wrong way and be a little bit unstable, you know, and you could be in a bit of trouble. But I never really had any trouble in prison, unless you go looking for it or you're involved in the wrong things. You're fairly safe. It's, you know, you're not one of us that will leave you alone, kind of thing, you know.
And so during this time, I'm guessing you're probably going to come out of prison, you're going to start afresh, you're going to put these behaviours behind you. And was it not like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was fixed. So I went into prison, and the substance misuse team come around and introduced themselves and asked, "Have you got any addictions? Have you got?" So I said, "Yeah, gambling," and I was told it's a secondary addiction. Yeah, we don't have any funding for that. We don't have any services for that. It's a secondary addiction. So when we talk about stigma, and that stigma that lady put on me that day by basically brushing it aside, you know, I just thought, right, I'm going to help myself then. I'm going to go down the self-help route. I'm clever enough. I'll do this. So I studied for a level 4 diploma in addiction counselling through the Institute of Counselling, distance learning. And I thought, right, I'm going to fix myself. I know what I need to do. I know everything, you know, because that ego is still raging. So by the time I come out, I thought, right, this is, like you say, it's all this, right? Fresh start. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to walk every day. I'm going to do all of this. And I'm never going to gamble again. But I hadn't dealt with the why. You know, even with these courses that you do, counselling courses, everything else, they don't teach me my why. They don't tell me how to get to my why. That comes from the person. It comes from yourself to look deep and understand what went wrong, where it went wrong. So yeah, I come out in March 2020 straight into lockdown, which really didn't help because it was almost like going from prison straight into prison. Everywhere's shut down. Everything you would look forward to, going out having a meal or just living a normal life, you couldn't anyway. It was straight into a lockdown. So I think that kept my gambling at bay for a little while because the bookies weren't open. I couldn't get a bank account because of the fraud. So it was literally the account that I had was very basic. Couldn't go online with it because probation, might check it one day, or that was in my head anyway. So I was thinking I'm fixed. So I met my current partner, and told her everything, because obviously within my addiction, there was also domestic issues. And when I say issues, I mean abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, intimidation. And so I just opened up with everything to her. I just said, look, this has been me. This is me clean. I'm all brilliant, all singing, all dancing, honeymoon period for probably a few months. And she bought it completely. And I believed it, genuinely believed it at the time. But within months, I was using the free spins. There was emails for free spins, free bets, come and join us. Sat at home, locked down, bored, and with my raging addict clearly out of the cage, I started registering accounts in my son's name, my daughter's name, my partner's name, my mum's name, because that was all fine to me because it was free. I wasn't depositing anything. I'm not risking anything. And looking back, I gambled the whole time I was in prison. So I just missed that part. But even whilst I was studying and fixing myself, I was playing poker for canteen every day. I was playing pool for canteen, double or quits. There was a bonus ball lottery in there. There was horse racing syndicates. There was football pools, all with canteen. But for me, because it wasn't 500 or £1,000 at a time, it wasn't gambling. It was just a bit of fun. It's boring, boring gambling. So all of this, then I bought a scratch card one day. I was on Universal Credit, and I won £20, and it allowed me to buy a load of picnic food. And I put on this nice, I took up baking. I'd done a course whilst I was in prison, a cooking course, and all of a sudden I love baking. So I made this picnic, all handmade, and it was just such a great day. Now, in my mind, what gave me the ability to do that was the £20 win. So if I hadn't have brought that scratch card, I couldn't have afforded that day. So that's how my mind then worked. So next time was another £2. I then believed I could control it just buying scratch cards, maybe just do the lottery. I'm still all fixed. And next thing I was in the bookies with £20 or £40, still controlled in my mind. And I then asked a local rehab centre for some volunteer hours to complete my qualification. And they actually offered me a job as a support worker. I spent 2 days there, and they were like, look, you're brilliant. Will you come and work for us? And about a week later, I got an email saying, oh, sorry, we're withdrawing the offer due to your conviction. Now, this is a rehab centre where I would hope understood addiction and understood that, not rightly, but criminality is often a part of, an addiction. And my world just crashed. I thought, if they're not even going to support me and, see past that after spending 2 days with me, then what's the point? And I then had another job where I didn't disclose anything. I was there for a couple of weeks. The guy loved me. He was like, I want to give you more. I want you to do everything here. And somebody then said, it sounds too good to be true. You're paying a minimum wage. And he Googled me. And then, of course, come back and he went, Andy, I'm scared. Like I'm wanting to leave you all the accounts and, customers paying their bills. And like, I don't know if you're over this gambling. And I was like, yeah, I am. I adamant. He obviously seen something. Because, he just said, look, I'm going to have to let you go. I can't do this. So by the time I took the job at the pig farm where I committed the most recent fraud, my life was like, I'm never going to work again. I'm going to be on universal credit for the rest of my life. I was depressed, manically depressed. So I phoned up, applied for this job, and he just went, "Well, come in tomorrow, take over tomorrow." So, all right, okay. Well, turned up. The first day went okay, and then she said, "By the way, we raise the payments at the end of each month for the bills." And straight away, again, my world crashed, because I'm not going to be able to take this. That's too much of a risk. But she then told me that they had an accountant once a month. She does all the bank reconciliations, the invoicing, safe as houses. All right. So I'll be okay. To cut a very, very long story short, within 5 months, that £20 or £40 controlled had gone to £50, to £100, to £500, to the point where it was £198,000 over 5 months, from July to December. I didn't go in there with the intention of taking a penny. I still went in thinking, I'm going to be all right. This is just a job. I'll do this for 2 years, get my sort of a little bit of reputation back, and then I'll move on. So, it looks very suspicious, as though I just went in and went, "I'm having this away." And it just wasn't at all. And at every stage, you think you're going to pay them back. Like I said about the 127,000, I genuinely thought, I will have a win tomorrow and I'll pay them back, and then I'll walk away. Yeah. Sorry, that was really long-winded, but I just...
No, mate, it's just, I think, like everyone listening or watching, it's horrifying, yet it's fascinating. And I mean, did you serve prison time for that?
Yeah, so recently. So basically, I went into Gordon Moody rehab in February 22. So if I go back, that was obviously uncovered. It was discovered. So I drove to Cornwall to tell my children and my mum what I had done. And there was an ulterior motive to that, which was I wanted them to absolutely disown me, rip me to shreds, because on the way home, I had selected a stretcher, the 303, where I was going to drive into a lorry. There's fast moving lorries. And I went, that's what I'm doing. So I left that morning. I filled the car up with a load of, I bought paracetamol and cocodamol, whatever I could, the whole way down, stopped at every shop, petrol station, bottle of spirits. I thought that's one way of doing it. But actually what I want to do is drive into a truck on the way home. And I just needed them to say, "You're scum, leave us alone. We never want to see you again." And I went to, my mum would always have 100% unconditional love for me. And, she would never do that. But my children then just said, "Dad, we just feel sorry for you. We've read up on the addiction. We understand it a bit more. We just want to help. How can we help?" And, they're there in tears, having suffered everything I've put them through over the years, everything they've witnessed with the drinking and my actions there, the gambling. And all they wanted to do was help. And yeah, they saved my life that day. A combination of Kate, my partner, my mum, and them, but they saved my life, because actually an hour later I wanted to be driving into a truck. And I just looked at them and thought, the biggest pain you are ever going to cause them is doing what you're about to do. You're going to leave them with trauma for the rest of their lives. This gambling, this fraud, this dad they've got at the minute can be changed. I know that. I know deep down I'm a good person. And I drove home and I phoned Gordon Moody. Phoned him on New Year's Eve of all times. And do you know what? Within 2 days, a guy called Dave, who I know now as Dave Hollingsworth, just the most special man in the world, he phoned me back and he said, "Andy, we will get you in. We will get you help. Stay where you are. Just, calm this down. We're here." So in February 22, I was accepted in there, 20th February. And I think I genuinely still, even at that point, I was still manipulating. I still went in thinking, this will reduce my prison sentence. It will make Kate believe in me. It will make the kids happy that they know I'm getting help. So I went in with all these other people that I was going to please and other avenues that I was going to get benefit from. And it wasn't until about week 5, and my therapist you know, when I say Dave was the most amazing man, the pair of them, it just, yeah, John Garney was my therapist, and he is just immense. And he had lived it. He had, you know, he'll openly say drink, drugs, and gambling. Lived on the streets of London at one point, and he's now been a therapist for over 20 years. And if anybody was ever going to get through to me, it was somebody like him who had lived it, could talk from it, and you know what, could call me out. He called me a blatant liar, told me I'm effing lying. You can waste your 14 weeks here. I'm going home at 5 o'clock. Not my problem, mate. You know, and walked out. And now for me, I'm like, I can prove you wrong. I'm not here for, you know, so it become a challenge almost. And I absolutely knuckled down from that day on. And I'd done the 12 steps with him on top of their rehab program. And I just, yeah, I've never looked back. I genuinely, it's like a switch went off. And I know people are always wary of, oh, you're early in recovery, you're early. I know my mind, and I know where there's that sort of switch, or it's something goes on in me. And it was the same with the alcohol. And yeah, I come out, there was just the most amazing support network that I never knew existed prior to that. So it's only being in that system that you then find out about, you know, the likes of Epic Restart Foundation, GAMFAM, which I joined their meetings. You know, there's just so many organizations out there, but you only hear about them once you're out, because people aren't interested in them before. They're just, what are they? Are they deal with gambling? So I, you know, I opened up to them. I went to Cumbria with Epic. Brilliant outdoor adventure week. Just, again, not my type of thing, or I didn't think it was. And it just further changed how I thought, what I, you know, what I believed in myself and how I connected with others. And then I joined the GAMFAM meetings, which are online support groups, peer support. And yeah, just a connection that I felt on there. I've never had friends in my life, because it's a very isolating addiction. You need to be isolated to do what you're doing. And all of it, I would say today, I've got friends, genuine friends, that I could pick up the phone and they will phone me back in seconds. So I started facilitating the group. I, you know, started taking my own group. And by the time I got to court that day, I think I went in with 14 different letters of support from psychologists, from people even writing that this guy saved my life. Where I messaged them back on Twitter one night, they were stood on a bridge in London. I had no idea at the time. It was probably midnight. And I just replied to them. And, you know, this carried on for a few hours into the early hours. And it was only a couple of weeks later, and she said to me, do you know, I was stood on a bridge that night. I was about to throw myself in front of the high-speed train. She said, and I messaged you, and you've messaged me straight back, and carried on. And she wrote to the court saying that. She gave her full story, what, you know, the damage she was suffering. And others saying, you know, you saved my family. I spoke to their wife and managed to get them thinking maybe in a little different way. And the judge just said, I accept all of this and brilliant. However, why didn't you just do it before? And I just want, you know, you want to throttle him and say, because I was a raging addict. Like, you know, it's such a sad system that the lack of understanding, or, you know, just isn't there. And that's why education is absolutely key. But
what did he give you?
Gave me 3 years.
Was that suspended then, or?
No. So it wasn't out of the realms of, you know, reality, really. He didn't give me anything extreme, but the prosecutor had intimated before the case that he would look at a deferred sentence. He would almost agree to a deferred sentencing, which would mean me going away, carrying on doing what I'm doing for the next 6 or 12 months, and then come back to the court. And if I've stuck to what I'm doing and everything else, that they would look at a suspended sentence. So no, it was 3 years. You serve 12 months of that, release on tag for good behaviour, and then I'll be under probation for 18 months. And all that means really is I'm already on monthly appointments, where if you just do the right thing, behave, engage with them, comply with them, you know, they're okay with you. All this talk of probation will stitch you up, and I'm sure some people struggle with them, you know, maybe because of their the way they live their life, or maybe because of a personality clash. But I can honestly say that, you know, my probation officer, as we sit here, is supportive and has been supportive of what I'm doing. So, yeah.
Blimey. What an incredible story. Well done, mate.
No, it's, as I say, it's very real. I think, you know, even sat here now, and I think there's still a little lack of self-belief where I'm still thinking, oh, I'm boring people here. I'm looking at you and I'm going, oh, I'm boring him, I'm boring it. Like, why do we question ourselves like that? It's because I know, I suppose because I've lived it for so long, and I tell it quite often, that I've almost become desensitized to it. Somebody told me their story the other day, and it was a really devastating story, crippling, very young girl sort of. And I almost sat there and went, yeah, I know. And it, like, that's really, she was having suicidal thoughts, she was going through. And it's not that I don't care, but, you know, it's almost like it's normal because I hear it every day of the week through gambling. And, you know, I almost want to scream at people and say, please wake up to gambling. We're 10 years behind where alcohol and drug kind of, you know, strategies are.
How do you feel then, Andy, when you see these gambling sites pushed all over the place in advertising at sporting events, in emails, to, you know, sent spam emails sent to you, and then they put a little line: if you're having a problem with gambling, please call this, you know, please seek help. And it's a recipe for disaster. Is there anyone that gambles happily? I mean, probably the odd person that really does it for maybe a sporting event, Grand National or something. But
I think I'll never be a prohibitionist, because I do genuinely believe, same as alcohol, some people can use it and they can use it moderately, and that's absolutely fine. They have their bit of entertainment. I think my problem with it is that they then can almost prey on these people. So they'll see an increase in your deposits, and they'll then up their emails to you. So if you've gone from £10 to £50, all of a sudden your free bet offer is increasing. And there's two ways of looking at it. I hate them with a passion because of the way I genuinely believe I was targeted and manipulated. They could see what I was, and they carried it on. You know, it. On the other hand, I pity them, because to have such low morals, you know, that's your problem. You deal with that. I think the marketing strategies, if you look at it from a business point of view, they are the best business people in the world, the best marketing strategists in the world. The reality is, like I just say, they are lacking any morals whatsoever by doing that. They're not thinking of the people. When I look at the sort of celebrities that are endorsing these adverts and companies, I think that annoys me even more, because they need to be educating themselves on the dangers of it, and then actually not jumping on board with them and just getting their pay for advertising them. You know, they're quite high profile football people, celebrities. That really gets my goat. And I just wish they would talk to me. You know, one of these people would talk to me, hear my story and go, shit, and I've been advertising them. I think it will always happen. The other way I then focus on that and get back to a positive is, the more we educate and the more we get into schools and talk about the likes of loot boxes, skins betting, the in-app purchases, say on FIFA player packs, that is your next generation of problem gamblers. But what we can do is educate them now to basically reduce the impact of those adverts. So we're never going to stop the adverts. I don't believe we are. There's groups out there, and I take my hat off to them. There's some devastating stories that have driven them, you know, suicide of family members that have driven them to call for advertising to be banned. And I'm behind them. I hope they do. However, I don't ever think we will. It's too big of a monster. But what I can do is educate people prior to them seeing those adverts. And that takes the power of those adverts away. Because if you watch them tomorrow and go, yeah, I've heard Andy's story though, imagine if I had a bet on that now, I might end up like that. So it doesn't matter what they offer you. I want to get you to a point where it doesn't matter what they offer you, what they advertise to you, you will make the choice not to do it, because my story is that horrific that I want you to not.
There's some sad sort of paradoxes here in that, you know, if you ask me, I'd always say that addiction is probably the best thing that ever happened to me. You know, I was a highly, highly damaged child. And that damage was steering me in a wrong direction in adulthood. I was just going not just in in every wrong direction. However, in my favour was the fact I was a single man. And the worst person I upset, I upset my family, my parents, obviously, and my siblings, but they really did kind of get over that when they saw me turn the corner. But I wasn't a parent, Andy, you know, and so it's all right for me to say it was the best thing that happened in my life. It's taught me, you know, set me on the journey to enlightenment, really. Made me a better person. But of course, you know, when children are involved, what I'm trying to say, I've got to be careful what I say, haven't I? You know, it's all right for me to say that, and I'm glad for you, because clearly you had unresolved trauma driving your behaviours. So it's an interesting one that society I don't think they're ever going to get it. There'll be people now that will look at this and go, oh, well, yeah, but you chose to gamble. Ugh. And it's like, fucking hell, did you literally not listen for the last hour and a half? What did you literally not hear me say? No, the devil controls us. We have to win back that control. For some people, they've had such a great upbringing with wonderful parents, for example, that the devil can't get in there. You know, he can't get his evil talons in there, because the kids are well balanced and they grow up and they know when to say yes and they know when to say no. That's not us, Andy, you know. We're the damaged kiddies. Very damaged, very easily swayed. Anything that will self-medicate us. So it's a conundrum. It is a conundrum, because if I could go back in time and someone says, oh, Chris, I can take all that addiction stuff away from you, I would sort of be like, no, I really needed to go through on this journey. I just really did. So there we go.
Yeah, I think it shaped me into who I am. And I look at a lot of people that haven't had the opportunity to go through rehab or have the treatment that I did. And, you know, they've never suffered from addiction, but they're still suffering from those childhood traumas or from just life, depression. You know, I've been really fortunate, even after everything that I've done, to receive that treatment, you know, and receive the support I continue to receive. So, yeah, I can look at addiction and think, God, it ruined my life. Or I could go, actually, I'm 45 and I've got the chance to use all this now, you know. So, yeah, you can look at it all ways round. But
so your book, mate, is available on Amazon. It's called HMS to HMP. Let me show a picture. 33 years of gambling addiction. And there we go. So, folks, there'll be a link for the book below. I'll put contact details or Andy's LinkedIn below this video. What are we saying, Andy, to close? If you're out there, if you're a veteran, you have susceptibility to this kind of thing because of the nature of the mindset of many people that join up. Not all people, but many of us fall on our ass and we struggle when we leave the forces. There's people out there that are non-military, and your experiences are your childhood experiences exactly the same as ours. And you know, there comes a time we start paying a piper for it. What we saying, Andy, I'd say number one, be honest with yourself. Be honest. There's nothing more sad than being with someone. They got a big, bright, red cherry nose. They got all the blood vessels burst in their face. You know, they're stopping off at the co-op on the way home from work and they're getting in a 24-pack of beer or whatever. Or it might be, like we say, it might be two, whatever. And they turn around and say, oh yeah, well, of course, I'm not an alcoholic because I work. Oh, right. Who you trying to fucking kid that one with? You know,
Yeah.
and I'm just saying, and we've all been there. It's a phase of addictive behavior that you're in denial at first. You're in the honeymoon period. It's great. Great in the early days. You think you're bloody boy wonder. So is that right, Andy? Be honest with yourself as soon as you can. If you got a problem, you know it. The angel on your shoulders whispering in your ear that this ain't this is.
Yeah, I think 100%. I think it is about being honest with yourself. There's no point being honest with others because it will always be tainted with you know what you want them to hear and shape the way you want them to hear. It's about being honest with yourself, and it really is. And I think where you just mentioned the veterans and even serving personnel, if you look at the research that's being done at Swansea University at the minute with Milgam and you know, service people are 8 to 10 times more likely to suffer from gambling harms. And I'd never have thought that, but they have done extensive research and they continue to. And that's why the forces community is a big area that I want to be in. And I hope you don't mind me mentioning, I think I sent you a message and just said that I'm looking at taking a role on next week with the Beacon Counselling Trust. And they've got a Battling the Odds program and a Bet You Can Change program, which is the Battling the Odds is armed forces specific, free training, and hopefully I'll be their education and training lead, delivering that education and training, in which part of that will be sharing my story with veterans. So if there's any groups out there that want that free training, maybe a Breakfast Club or a British Legion, it could be a serving personnel who's listening to this, and actually, could you get me onto your base and get me contacts to come and give a talk? I'll give a talk anywhere to families, veterans, whoever. So yeah, I'll be starting that next week, and I think it's really important work. Just with those results that they're coming up with at Swansea University is a really dangerous area with servicemen and addictions all round. And I think we're prime examples of that today. So yeah, but yeah, just be honest.
Be honest. Reach out for support, folks. You know, if you're in a section in the military or a troop or ship's party, whatever it might be, you know, the one that doesn't reach out for support when they're struggling is the weakest link. They're the one that's letting the whole side down. It's nothing to be ashamed about saying, do you know what, I'm struggling, I need help. I did it last week, I probably did it the last month. It's because it's what you do to maintain a good lifestyle with good people around you, and they understand. I wouldn't reach out to the ones that don't understand, folks, because you're going to get a lecture and they just say, well, just stop doing it, because, you know, for the reasons we covered. So reach out for support. The final thing I'd say, Andy, is, and this might not be applicable to you, but certainly was for me, understand the stages of change, or also referred to as the cycle of change. And that is, in a nutshell, the thing about lapsing or relapsing is that's your learning point. That's when you pick up a behaviour that you said you wouldn't do. Doesn't mean you failed. Absolutely not. What it means is you'll do it and you'll go, do you know what? I said I wasn't going to do this again. I said it's costing me money. It's costing me my family. It's costing me my self-respect. I'm just not enjoying it anymore. Right. got to take action again, haven't I? Got to take action again. Pick your date and boom, you go for it again. I say that because I've done that probably 1,000 times. Other people, like the 12-step program, they have a different approach. You know, you got to find whatever works for you. The reason I'm saying this is you haven't failed if you relapse. You absolutely haven't. All your family will think you have. Oh, look, he's doing it again. He's doing it again. They don't get it. You got to learn this shit, you know. The only reason you learn to win the Grand Prix is you crash loads and loads of times first. That's it. And you spin off the track and you hit other drivers and It's just called learning. I just chucking that in there, folks, because we've got quite a skewed idea of recovery. Comes from a lot of these American films where you just click your fingers and you never do it again. And it's not always that simple. Andy, we're going to put your links below. Thanks ever so much, mate, for coming on the show.
No, thank you for the opportunity. It's massive, and as I say, the more I can get it out there, and as I say, we're only individuals, but you know, anybody wants to just send me a message. If you think I don't want to reach out to an organisation yet, I'm not ready to ask for help. Like, I'm one person. I can't, you know, you can't fix everyone or help everyone, but I'm always happy to receive messages on any of those links, whether that's Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you want. And I genuinely, I really care. And I'll look to help you any way I can, whether that's just referrals, signposting, whatever. And like you were just saying, I don't care to which organisation it's. I've obviously got those that have helped me, but if they don't suit you, or that path doesn't suit you, or, you know, recovery is just whatever suits you. I don't care how you get there or what stops you. It's just getting you there.
And
you know?
start
so
online.
Yeah.
Start online, 100%. Folks. If you're listening now and you're struggling, just get hold of Smart Recovery. Just Google or search engine, I should say, Smart Recovery. My buddy Johnny does a great job. He takes charge of the Veterans Smart Recovery. He's a lovely bloke. I've referred so many people to him. I've referred family members to him. And he's a lovely bloke. He'll just be on the end of a line to chat to you. But you can sign up for this support online. If you don't want to go and meet people in person, you could probably attend, I'm guessing, some sort of Zoom meeting. You don't even have to have your camera on, do you? You can just sit there in the background with a black screen and just listen, you know. And when you feel ready, maybe you share your story, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just, you know, start to take the action.
And I'm sorry, Chris, I know we've gone on forever, but I just want to get in as well, just about the affected others, because it's normally one of my real passions, because I hate the fact I've affected them so much, but there are a lot of groups out there, but GAMFAM, especially with the affected others, they have their online groups. So if you're listening to this today and you can't get your partner or your loved one or your son or whoever to be honest with themselves, but you need support, then, you know, you can reach out yourself. Have a look at GAMFAM, have a look at anywhere that does affected other work. There's loads, there's ARA, there's Beacon Counselling Trust, there's just so many. But if you are struggling with a loved ones, don't suffer on your own. Don't try and fix them. Set your boundaries and just reach out for your own help. It's so important.
Absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad that you added that. Okay, Andy, stay on the line so we can thank you properly. But thanks again, shipmate. Really stellar effort. Well done, folks. Reach out, grab Andy's book. I think I don't need to tell you. I think it's going to be a page turner. And if you can like and subscribe, yada yada yada. If indeed you do like the podcast, if you don't, then you clearly don't have to. Or you can support me on Locals or Patreon, or just become a YouTube member. It's $1.99 a month, folks. You know, just to support the podcast, because I think we put out quite an important message. Hope it's helped you. Much love.
'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die.